before we prepare for our meditation, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Reverend Karen Gray. Karen Gray is an interfaith minister ordained in 2003 in New York. She attended All Faiths Seminary International in New York City. Karen grew up attending the Unitarian Church, which she still admires. Now she finds herself most at home with Unity teachings and enjoys speaking for several Unity churches in the DMV. Karen's ministry also includes officiating ceremonies and offering pastoral care. She trained with the art of pastoral care and found volunteering as a hospice caregiver in Montgomery County most fulfilling. Karen is a jazz vocalist, grateful for music in her life and for the wonderful musicians in DC with whom she's shared the bandstand. She has led ensembles through the DC area, including the Smithsonian Jazz Cafe, the Kennedy Center Millennium Stage, Twins Jazz, and the Duke Ellington Jazz Festival, plus thousands of other public and private events. Life is made sweet and fun by Karen's 10-year-old daughter, Dorothy. For our meditation and message today, ready for this? Ready? Let's give a warm Unity welcome to Reverend Karen Gray.
The rest of the week. And I welcome your consciousness back into this space as we continue to share more about divinity and enlightenment through words. Now, Unity is a prayer-based tradition. And Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore identifies 7 conditions necessary for true prayer. 7 conditions. Each one of these conditions could be a whole book, at least a sermon. We're going to focus on one, but I'm going to go through all 7 first. Number 1, God should be recognized as Father. And when I think Father, I think source and creator. So God should be recognized as our source and our creator. 2, oneness with God should be acknowledged. 3, prayer should be made in the secret place. We truly go within. 4, the door must be closed on all thoughts and interests of the outer world. 5, the one who prays must believe that he has received. 6, the kingdom of God must be desired above all things and sought first. And 7, the mind must let go of every unforgiving thought. The mind must let go of every unforgiving thought in order to have true communion with God. We have to be free, clear of all condemnation. This is not news. In Matthew, Jesus tells us that when we're taking an offering to the altar, when we're going to our God with what we have to offer, but then we recognize that there's a grudge or a condemnation in our hearts, we are supposed to put that gift down, go take care of the grudge, go back to our brother or our sister and resolve it, and then come back and give the offering. And it's not because God's going to reject our offering or show disapproval by saying, oh, you're being bitter, I'm not going to take your gift. It's not that. It's because when we're trying to get into the secret place of Holy Communion, any baggage is too cumbersome. We won't fit in the door. The standard The standard, the degree of sensitivity to baggage is high. It is high. And as we go through this talk about forgiveness today, I invite you to consider if there's anybody in your midst, anybody in your life, anybody in your consciousness against whom you have some kind of grudge or resentment. Maybe somebody in a personal relationship or somebody on a global scale. I don't know. And I'm not saying now dwell on that. I'm just saying keep aware of it, because maybe that will help the message or anything that comes through to be more applicable, to be more useful. So here's a way of drawing a comparison. As was mentioned in my bio, I have a daughter. Now, she's 10 years old now, but in recent years, telling her stories, I started to think about things the way you try to explain things to a child. And, of course, there were all the wonderful stories that we share with our children. One of them is the story of the princess and the pea. And when I think about our divine sensitivity to condemnation or negative energy, it really is sensitivity, like the princess in the story of the princess and the pea. Now, in that story, the princess is made of such pure princess material. She is so delicate that when she tries to sleep on a stack of feather mattresses, so comfortable, she cannot sleep at all because there is a tiny pea under the bottom of that stack, and that is just too much for her. Now, in our topic, it's not the princess who is so sensitive, it is our Christ consciousness. And it isn't a little pea that wreaks such havoc. It is bitterness. It turns out that even the tiniest, even the most, shall we say, justified bitterness will keep our Christ consciousness in a state of unrest. So let's look a little farther. Let's look, shall we say, at the contract between us and God. And by this, I refer to the Lord's Prayer. So let's look at the Lord's Prayer and let's look at it line by line, because it really is the definition, the description of our relationship with our Mother, Father, God. Beginning, our Father. And that just means we all share. It's not my Father, it's our Father. And the Father represents the benevolent creator and source of all good. Who art in heaven, meaning that true knowledge of God is the experience of heaven. Hallowed be thy name. Divine nature is pure, perfect, and only good. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, means no waiting. God's good is here and active right now. On earth as it is in heaven. No need to go looking for it. It's right here. Give us this day our daily bread. God provides for our every need. Forgive us our trespasses. When we transgress, God will bring us back into alignment with truth. Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. God will provide guidance and wisdom. Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. Now that's not really Jesus' original language from the Sermon on the Mount anyway. This was added by church authorities in the 3rd or 4th century, but it's okay. Forever and ever. And that sums it up. That's the Lord's Prayer. Unless I left something out. Did I? You guys are paying attention. What did I leave out? I left out our end of the bargain, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Everything else in that prayer is what God is going to do for us. That one line is the one thing we're supposed to do. Now, if this were a legal contract, and I recognize that I'm in Washington, D.C., so I'm betting there are some lawyers here. If this were a legal contract, then it would not be valid unless it had that part that is what we have to give. Because in a legal contract, each side has to be given something. But unless we're doing that for giving others, we're not doing anything. That is the one thing that is required. Now, the Lord's Prayer is not a legal contract, but it is a statement of divine law. Divine law, God's law, is explanatory. So it's not prescriptive, it's descriptive. It tells us this is just the way things are. Divine law is not punitive. It is natural law. The law explains how things are. It's a user's guide to life. It's descriptive like the law of gravity. We're familiar with the law of gravity. If I go up to the roof and I walk around, that's fine. If I keep on walking and go off the edge of the roof, I'm going to fall down. And it's going to hurt. And it's nothing personal. It's just the law. It's the way it goes. That is gravity. The same kind of truthfulness applies to the law of forgiveness. If we hold on to bitterness, we are not honoring the law. We're not honoring God's divine law, and it's going to hurt. The Lord's Prayer spells out that we receive all guidance, all grace, and all bounty. What we give in order to make the divine world go around is forgiveness. Is this a deal that we are prepared to accept? Now, I know that we want to be forgiving, and probably we do a lot of forgiving. And that doesn't mean that we condone bad behavior. If someone hurts us, I don't think we're meant to say, sure, go ahead and do that. I have never myself given a sermon on turn the other cheek. I might one day, but I'm not doing it today. So we are supposed to look out for ourselves. Forgiveness doesn't mean that we don't care. After all, we're children of God. We deserve some pretty good care. Forgiveness doesn't mean hanging around so that someone can hurt us, but sometimes we do have to remove ourselves from situations or circumstances or relationships that are toxic and unsafe. But forgiveness is how we leave a situation without taking the toxicity with us. Now, for sure, anger and condemnation at times seem justified. So let's wrestle with this. Do we want to be justified according to our human sense of fairness? Or do we want to be in harmony with divine love and wisdom? But what do we do in the face of evil? If somebody is hurting us in a personal way, or if somebody is inflicting harm on a grand scale, what do we do? Now, Charles Fillmore defines evil as that which is not of God, and he calls evil a parasite with no life of its own. So if we respond to evil with judgment, we become the host organism. Because judgment is also not in our divine nature. And now we are playing evil's game. By the act of condemnation, we are declaring that somebody is not one of us, not part of the one presence and the one power. We cultivate the illusion and give strength to the idea that there's something else, that which is not of God. And always, forgiveness is our way back to good, to God. Now, each of us probably has some kind of a spectrum along which we consider forgivability. Conditions that we can apply, like, I can forgive somebody because they didn't know better. I can forgive somebody because they showed real remorse. I can forgive somebody who hurts me, but not somebody who hurts my child. There is a really challenging spectrum there. But simple, absolute, 100% forgiveness can seem so very hard. Sometimes our heads are so full of knowing that something was wrong, or our hearts are so full of pain brought on by another's actions. And forgiveness seems like too grand a gesture. And sometimes I don't want to be that big. Sometimes I just want to be me. And if somebody has hurt me or hurt my child, then maybe I want to hold on to that grudge and just be human for a while, not so lofty and spiritual. So here's the misunderstanding. If we're thinking of forgiveness as too grand a gesture, the problem is forgiveness is not a grand gesture. Forgiveness is not a gesture. A gesture is outward. Forgiveness is inward. Nor is forgiveness the stuff of heroes. You don't have to be Jesus. But remember, you are just as much a child of God as Jesus was. Forgiveness is, for all of us, the most natural way. Forgiveness is a return to normal. I was not born bitter, and neither were you. We are created by God as peaceful beings. And besides, if you perceive evil in another person, the last thing you want to do is hand over to that person the authority to make you less than who you are. I am a child of divine love and divine peace. Let's say it 3 times together. I am a child of divine love and divine peace. I am a child of divine love and divine peace. I am a child of divine love and divine peace. Thank you. To forgive is not to grant a favor out of generosity or righteousness. It is to release what doesn't serve us. And in so doing, we uphold our own divine identity. To be fully forgiving is a relief. To be in a position of not having to judge another person, what a load off. Why would we want that responsibility? First of all, our approval doesn't matter. Secondly, God's approval does matter, and they've already got it. Indeed, the person who has hurt me or hurt you or hurt our children is a fully beloved child of God. God is not even mad at him. And similarly, when we do something that's not living up to who we truly are, God is not mad at us. According to divine law, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. It just keeps the world going round. Now, I asked Raquel, I was told that you all are familiar with the hymn, I Behold the Christ in You, right? I love that hymn. I started loving that hymn when I first heard it because it's just very pretty. And then there was one day, my daughter was a baby girl. She was there in her father's arm. We were standing around at the church. We were singing that song. And just, the light came in just the right way, and it shined on her golden hair. And I was like, yes, I know what this song is all about. That song was about my baby girl, Dorothy. And I felt so uplifted, like God had graced me with this particular divine understanding about what it meant to see the Christ in someone. And for many weeks, maybe even months, I sang that song with extra gratitude and extra power. I was in awe. I was so grateful. And then one day it dawned on me, oh wait, but beholding the Christ in my little baby girl is really easy. And you know, in Luke 6:32, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them, so drat. So the better question is, can I behold the Christ in someone who doesn't seem so innocent and adorable? Can I behold the Christ in someone who's done something really bad? If someone has committed atrocities, is that a child of God? If someone has committed child abuse, is that a child of God? Yeah, because if not God, then of whom? We are all children of God. There is but one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life, God the good. So for a while, when my congregation would sing that song, I would deliberately call to mind some really evil person, and I would just think, behold the Christ, behold the Christ, behold the Christ. And it really worked. It really brought me a measure of peace, and I was grateful. I'm not kidding. I would think Hitler, Saddam Hussein. I would really think about people who had done a lot of harm, and I would think, I behold the Christ in you. I behold the Christ in you. And it felt better. It was very healing. And I thought, wow, I am really becoming enlightened. This really works. And then, see, there was this one day, I was working on a project, and I was on a committee, and there was this one person on the committee, and she was really getting on my nerves. And she was not an enemy, she was not a bad person, but she was really getting on my nerves. And so I thought, oh yeah, the hymn. So I started thinking, I behold the Christ in her, I behold the Christ in her. But it didn't work. And I was thinking, why isn't this working? What am I supposed to do with this? I do behold the Christ in her. That's why I expect her to know better. What was I to do with this uncomfortable feeling? What is it? What is it? And I realized, well, if I'm going to be able to quit obsessing about what is bugging me, I have to come at it from a much higher place, like from the Christ in me. When it comes to forgiving somebody, you can behold the Christ in them all day and all night. It is not about them. It's not even about my relationship with them. If I have someone to forgive, it has only to do with me and my relationship with God. Do I trust God or not? If I do, then I can stop second-guessing God's work. In this way, faith is acceptance of divine order. And accepting divine order equals forgiveness. In fact, when we're truly accepting divine order, we don't have to forgive because we don't condemn in the first place. We save all that forgiveness work because we believe. If I have difficulty seeing the Christ in another, it's because I am not looking through Christ's eyes. I am forgetting my divine identity. When we know and remember our divine identity, when we choose to know this and live this, we always forgive. And our lives will reflect the clarity that we maintain. Our wonderful Unity teacher, Emmett Fox, says that if what you seek is not coming to you, then check and see if you have something to forgive. Whatever you're holding on to is holding back the prosperity, the peace, the perfect health, or whatever represents the gift of God to you. Put down that burden of condemnation before you take your offering to the altar. Let's know and remember that forgiveness is not a discrete decision or action. It is a way of life, a way of being. It is our most great kindness to ourselves. It's also our truest expression of confidence in the one presence. Faith equals forgiveness. So next time y'all sing that song, I behold the Christ in you, behold it in yourselves. That really is the secret. Let's reside there with the Christ in ourselves. Thank you.